Okay, so we are joined in conversation today by Dave Schultz. Dave is the global head of solution consulting at Tipalti. Dave is somebody that I've had the pleasure to recruit for in the past, and he is a top-notch hiring manager. And I've always been really struck by how kind of fiercely proud and supportive he is of his team. He's somebody who's really got a clear idea in terms of what he's looking for, from my experience. And also, I noted a very perceptive BS radar as well I picked up along the way. So thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, thanks for having me, John.
Super. Um, so Dave, so you started in pre-sales 5 years ago, but obviously you have a career you had a career beforehand. Having previously worked in industry, what have you found that you really kind of enjoyed and loved about pre-sales?
I think first, and I guess I've had a lot of different types of roles before I became a solutions consultant. So I think just having a rounded view of a company and organization. So I was in product, I was in implementation. And what I like about pre-sales is it allows me to use the skills and some of the knowledge that I had there in a different way.
Yeah.
Things I really enjoyed. I'm a big fan of human interaction, and I like chatting with people and figuring things out without the downside of some of the things that aren't fun about, let's say, implementation or product. Uh, Actually, implementing someone has never been a joy for me, and also building out a roadmap and writing user stories was never fun for me. So I get to use that kind of part of my brain, but in a way to help solve a problem and help people uncover things maybe they didn't think were possible, and looking things in a different way. So I really enjoy that part of the process and just getting to chat with folks
Super.
and different folks, not always the same folks all the time.
Mm.
Thank you so much, Dave. And if we are thinking about your hiring, how much hiring have you done, and how important is hiring for you?
Yeah, so how much hiring? A lot. So I've been at Tipalti for about 5 years, been running the team for about four and a half of that. When I started, there were two of us. As we sit now, there are 28 of us. And so I went from two in Northern California to 28 across North America, and now in Europe. So a lot of growth there, a lot of remote growth. Obviously, a lot of it happened during COVID, so not a lot of in-office stuff. Hiring is the most important thing I do. I think everything stems from that. You hire the right people, and I think the rest takes care of itself. If you hire the wrong people, the rest takes care of itself in the other way. So I think I'm pretty specific. I have a pretty good profile of what I'm looking for from a person perspective, and we stick to that. I've taken on individual work to not hire the wrong person. I'd rather run a cycle myself than hire someone that's going to upset the apple cart, so to speak.
It makes perfect sense, and I believe it is so good that you have a clear picture of what you're looking for in an ideal candidate. And if you are thinking about your team, what are those traits that make the difference between a regular SE and superstar?
It's a good question, and I think it's nuanced. I'm just gonna the technical ability, the ability to understand the product and all that stuff. I'm using that as a given. I think that's just table stakes for me. You have to have the aptitude to understand what we do. So I think things that stand out for me first and foremost is empathy, and I don't, not just because you're a caring person that's nice, but it's also empathy means you listen, you understand, you pause and try to get where the other person's coming from. And I think for me, the best SCs listen to what their prospects need and their pains, and then try to address that and have a conversation around that versus just explaining what we do. Knowing when to push back, I think it's important, knowing when to maybe disagree with a prospect in an appropriate way, and a different way of looking at things. A lot of folks get set in what they know. And part of buying a new solution or addressing a problem is you need to change what you know because that's not working. Also, those that know how to take a step back. I am a huge proponent of work-life balance. I don't want folks working late in the evenings and on weekends We make exceptions all the time. It's the nature of business. But I think those that can separate and step away and can be efficient with their time during the day, I think that's an extremely important thing for me, because it leads to long time success in the role. And you know, as someone who cares about the business side, I think it makes a lot of sense that people are happy and healthy. But caring for the people side as well, you don't want people that are unhappy and burnt out and go into their weekends, you know, bitter because of how much they had to work and things of that nature. So finding that balance, I think, is really important to me.
Yeah. It's so easy to for everyone to fall into the trap of just being pushed into a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. And you don't bring your best self when you're pushed. A bit of pressure is good, but when it becomes too much, it's just, yeah, it's crazy.
I'd rather have 35 hours of a great SC than 50 hours of a decent SC.
Yes.
I just think, and I do my best to do the same.
Good.
I work a little bit more than others, but that's also kind of with the role. But I still try to make sure that the team sees that there's a separation.
Super, good stuff. And you talked about before, so you talked about pushing back and empathy. I suppose empathy is like it's a natural trait, and it's also easier when you've been in the situation of somebody else. And so I know, so Tipalti sell into Office of Finance. So most of your stakeholders are finance professionals, to my understanding. And, you know, we talked before about you coming from an industry background, and I know that you've had good success hiring people from the finance side. So like CPAs, you'd say in the US, I've forgotten the acronym in the UK, but finance professionals, and obviously they will have, you know, that level of empathy, having sat on the customer side. Is that the reason why you've done that? What's been your thinking behind leaning on individuals that come from finance type roles?
Well, I think if you know the industry, you know the role, you automatically build a bit of credibility just off the bat. You say I'm a CPA and you're selling to a controller. I think there's a lot of value there. We also, a part of our business, we sell to folks that are in product. I can resonate very well with those folks because I have a product background. So we definitely have about a little bit more than half the team, I think, are from the industry. Actually have a couple of former customers as well who have joined the team because they like the product so much and they wanted to get out of the accounting or the finance world. But if you can get to a point where who you're selling to or who you're speaking to knows you understand their world, that's a huge thing. It's really valuable. Now it has to be authentic. You can't come across as BS. So if you have that title, you've worked as a manager of FP&A, or you've been in one of the big four, people let their guard down a bit more because excuse my language, you're not just going to be speaking of a bunch of bullshit and don't know what they do. You actually know what they do because you might have done it yourself. Now, I don't want the entire team to be that, because I do also believe that you can't have all of the same person and the same skill set in a role. I think diversity of thought, different ways of looking at things is also extremely important. And so that's why we've definitely indexed a lot on the finance side, but it's by no means all we hire.
Yeah. I mean, I just hear it time and time again that, you know, customers, it's a really kind of a peer level conversation, and also just the practical kind of understandings of the politics within an organization, how things get bought, what the incentives are, what the drivers are. It all adds up. And from our experience, there are challenges to hiring people from industry in the sense that it's a different role. For example, working within a sales cycle, working with account execs. How do you when you're looking at somebody from industry, is there anything you pay particular attention to in terms of how well they would transition into a pre-sales role?
Yes. And then also there's certain responsibility on our end, and I'll start with that. I think part of it is the expectation setting you do up front in conversations and what the role is going to be, right? If you just are the real role and what it is, and not just the what's in the CV, right? And that helps weed out folks that would be interesting in and folks that it wouldn't be. Once again, I look for folks that can hold a conversation. I look at more than anything else their motive. Why? like, well, I understand, are you running away from finance? Because a lot of accountants do that. They don't love being a bean counter. And that's, my father's a CPA, bean counter, so nothing against that. But not everyone wants that. And so are they running away or are they running toward?
Yeah.
And I think you can get in the interview cycle. You can understand the inquisitive nature. You can, the types of questions they ask, the conversation, the dynamic, the way they can keep eye contact when they're chatting or whatever it may be. Small things really, really matter. You can get a little empathy just even during an interview. So I think that's really, really important. It's just the conversation side of it. The technical side of understanding finance, great. I almost take that as a given based upon their job. I'm pretty comfortable that you can learn to talk about the software. I mean, we're not, this is much more of a business consulting role in my role than deep technology. So if you can carry a conversation, you are a good communicator, you ask good questions. Most of my interviews, I answer more questions than I ask, particularly at the point in the interview cycle. I think that's all extremely important. And I have the responsibility of setting expectations to know what the job is, right? And what it is. There is, as much as I enjoy the role, there are some things that, like, AEs sometimes are not, you have some AEs that aren't your favorite, right? Or sales cycles, I should say. AEs is the wrong term. Sales cycles are not your favorite because of the way they go. And understanding there'll be those kinds of things that pop up. And this will sound kind of silly, but it's something I actually hold true. And it's, at the end of the day, would I sit down and have dinner with this person?
Yeah.
Because I need to ensure that they're going to resonate with who they're speaking to. I think that's part of it as well. And that's a hard transition, going from behind the scenes accounting role into a very much customer focused consulting role.
Yeah, amazing. And maybe I'm generalizing and maybe this isn't a fair comment, but if you look at roles like finance, typically you'll get people that have got a very strong attention to detail, the detail orientation is there. And then it tends to be kind of a more introverted role in the sense that you're not spending so much time in conversation and do you look for like extroverted people from the finance side? Are there any kind of commonalities there, or am I off the mark?
But definitely, you're going to have the more extroverted, just the folks that are even wanting to go down this path. You tend to have to be a little bit of an extrovert. True story, I'm not an extrovert. I just play one on TV. So it's being extrovert enough. We've also had the benefit of a lot of internal referrals. Yeah. So the first finance individual I hired referred somebody who then referred somebody. And so they also get a good understanding of what the role is. Yeah. And as part of the interview cycle, they all chat with each other. I'm not the last interview, right? So I'm at the very, very end of the process. But you kind of John, you said kindly that I have a good BS meter. I can suss out like how comfortable someone is and how I think they'll be in communicating with a prospect through the interview process.
Yeah. And maybe extroversion was an unfair way of saying it. I think I mean more that they enjoy that customer interaction. And then obviously when you get into a role like pre-sales, then suddenly you're in this super exciting role where you get to speak with a variety of different customers about different scenarios and that sort of thing.
Yeah. And I think there's that definitely customer interaction. But I think, at least in my world, that change, it's the using your brain in a different way. Mm-hmm. It's solving different problems. It's taking what you've learned and what you've done, but now applying it in a completely different way. Mm-hmm. And I think that's been a lot of the motivations of the individuals that have joined the team from industry. They don't want to lose, they went to school, right, for this. And so they don't want to lose all of that, but how can I apply it in a different way? Yeah. And you can, and some of the enthusiasm, or you can almost see a light in their eye when you're going in an interview. It's subtle, but you can almost see it. That's something it's not tangible, but I can feel during the process that lets me know this person might be a good fit. Now, obviously, we're going to talk to a bunch of other people during the interview process, but that's something that you can tell. To your point, whether it's introvert or extrovert, it's extrovert. It's a spark in the conversation about potentially taking the role that helps me feel more comfortable in having someone join.
Super.
Thank you so much, Dave. And it seems like that extroversion, introversion thing is super related to empathy and the listening skills. It seems like you have a gut feeling to catch the right vibe, if that makes sense. Do you have any specific questions that could help other hiring managers to assess empathy, for example, or to somehow get that sparkle in their eyes?
I always ask why the career change. I know it sounds it's generic, but why do you want to make this career change? And truly understanding, it goes back to, are they running away or are they running toward? But my process is, at this point, they go through the standard, yeah, they have to demo to folks and all that kind of stuff. But when it gets to me, I'm really more about motive and culture fit at this point. And so I spend 2/3 of the time answering questions. And that, to me, and the types of questions that get asked, help me understand the motivation of what's important to them, right? If they're asking about the role and what the day-to-day is going to be like, they're asking about the team, how I work with others, all that kind of stuff, that helps me understand they're truly interested and this is what they want. If they're asking basic compensation type questions, or what's the benefits package and things of that nature, that tells me no, that's not a good fit. But it's the quality of the questions they ask, and then as a solutions consultant does, I always have follow-up questions to their questions, and it's their responses to those. That's an interesting question. Why do you ask? Or whatever it may be. It's the answer to those and how they can think on their feet that help me also feel like, one, I understand their motivation, and two, they are able to think quickly and respond with a quality answer. And that way we get away from the canned interview responses, which is something I truly try to avoid, is asking standard interview questions, other than well, why do you want to make this career transition? Because I think anyone would ask that. That's important to me.
Thank you, Dave. And I believe this would be super helpful for our viewers as well. And if you could go back and talk to yourself when you first started assessing candidates, what advice would you give yourself?
It's trust your instinct. There are times that I've been actually very fortunate in that the retention rate and that folks in this team, it's really, really high as we've grown, and I'm really happy about that. But there are times that my gut told me we maybe shouldn't move forward, and we did. And that ends up not being a wonderful thing. And there are times where I said I wasn't sure, and so I had one more conversation, and I got that level of, okay, let's move forward, and it's worked. So it's trusting my instinct, but also early on, when we weren't a big team, I didn't have a lot of SCs that could be part of the interview process. Trusting colleagues, finding a couple of colleagues, whether it's sales managers or my colleagues and counterparts on the sales side, or even in product, finding a handful of people that I just intrinsically trust, and that they'll tell me like it is, and I know their opinions are meaningful to me. That's helped me suss candidates in or out. And then as we grew, it becomes a lot easier, because now I have a bunch of folks on the team that know our team, know our culture, know the role, came from industry, have different lengths of career, different backgrounds, and that's now I can trust their instincts. And I think that combination from early on to now is a big difference. For me, if someone gets to me at this point, I feel very comfortable they can do the job. It's will they, and do it well, because we're pretty tough crowd. But it's will they be additive to the team? It's not just will they fit in the team, will they be additive to the team? And so it's that last thing, is finding people that will add incremental value, and not just another person who can do the job.
Thank you so much, Dave. And the last question from my side, as a global director, how do you go about coaching and training your managers to hire?
It's difficult, because once you're global, cultures are different, environments are different, and you have to be sensitive to that when I'm hiring in. And so, I was fortunate enough to work with John and my first hires in Europe. And one of the things that just in doing that hiring process was letting the first manager I hired know that empowering them to know what's right for their market. I know what's right for the company, and there are certain things that are non-starters. We have a no asshole policy, but we do know that different geographies and different markets are different, and that's important. I think once again, it's everything that I went through. And my last response is find people you trust. Find people whose opinion matter to you, and you know that if they're feeling positive or they're on the fence or negative, that should color and give guidance to your decision. It shouldn't be the final decision. At the end of the day, it's your decision whether or not you want to hire someone or not. And then it's empowering them to do it. And we've had good success doing that as well. And I think if you set up the interview model properly, that the candidate gets to have enough conversations to know about Tipalti. We have enough different conversations to get to know about the candidate. That process intrinsically makes it easier on the hiring manager to trust the collective gut of everyone. And I think that also matters. Don't be afraid. The way we built this, you may make a mistake. Odds are against it. We've done really well, but if you do, it's okay. It's harder to unravel, but we'll be fine. And I don't want people to live in fear of hiring. I think hiring is a positive thing, and I think just empowering folks to do that and build their own network of trust within the company is important. And trust, if you build trust with the recruiting team, whether an in-house team that we have, as well as potential, external recruiters, trusting those folks that the candidates you get are already vetted to a point where you're not dealing with folks that would never make sense at the company. I think that makes it easier as well.
Amazing. Sounds really. I think you said communal gut feel, or something that I've written down. Crowdsourced intuition, but it sounds like a very collaborative experience, and you kind of develop trust with people over time, and you bounce off each other, and that kind of helps make the decision-making process that bit more robust.
You have to. I don't. It's not a dictatorship. At the end of the day, I'm not the one who's in the day-to-day trenches with everyone anymore. Unfortunately, I'm a little bit away. So for me to be the arbiter of everything doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
You trust people and empower them. And, if they've seen who's here, they see the type of individual that is successful here, and how they collaborate and how they've individually collaborated. And then it's kind of this kind of ball of momentum that just keeps on moving forward. And that's kind of what we built.
Yeah, it kind of becomes cultural in the sense that you can see that person fits in. And you said you've gone from 2 to 28, lots of growth. I'm sure there's lots of growth projected. You've got managers now doing the recruiting. You've got an international team. And it sounds to me like you're all building this trust together and building an idea, like a way of working together. And you mentioned things like a no arsehole policy. So are there any, when you go out to hire as a hiring team, do you set any kind of must-haves in terms of values or culture? Do you define kind of what you're looking for, or is it more everybody speaks with the individual and then you kind of come together afterwards to see what you all think? Like how much structure do you think is important as you get bigger?
I always think structure is important. I think you have to balance structure with the experience of a candidate and of the role and the speed in which you might need to hire, right? I think structure helps when you have to hire quickly. I think we have a standard process. Hiring manager talks to someone first. They talk to a couple peers. They do a demo, and then I might be the last person. So we clearly need to see the technical ability, and unfortunately, we do lose a fair number of really nice, wonderful people when you get to the demo part because it's just not a fit,
Yeah.
and that's okay. But I think collaboration, a we first policy, not a me first policy. If you can't, they teach you in the sandbox when you're growing up, if you can't play nicely with others, right? I think that's really important in this role. You are going to be collaborating everywhere. It's not just sales, it's implementation, it's product. We do a lot of webinars for marketing. It's across the organization. And so seeing people that enjoy and gravitate towards working with others. A lot of times people from industry, they do a lot of, kind of silo or not as broad a spectrum of interactions. And so I think it's that. That doesn't mean someone who's never done cross-collaborative work can't be successful. But I'm going to sound very Californian here, but it's just a vibe to get off of people. I am in California, so I'm going to say UK. But there's just something that's just intangible that you can just tell. Or at least we've been able to just tell collectively. But the process is the same.
Yeah.
I'll list the last things. I know it's a very long-winded response, but one of the things we try to balance is getting enough information so that's a rigorous enough interview process without being overbearing. And I know John, you've actually been through some of this interview process with us, but not just for Tipalti. Yes, we need to learn about this individual, but throughout the entire process, we try to let the candidate know they're learning about us. They're interviewing us just as much as we're interviewing them. And so the way we've established the process is they get enough contact with different people. Some request another conversation so that they feel comfortable. And it's you're proposing after 3 dates. Yeah. You think about it. You're looking for a long-term relationship.
100%.
So the more friends and family you can talk to in those 3 dates, the better. you get a better understanding of the situation from a candidate's perspective. And it goes back to empathy because the candidate sees that we're concerned about, they feel comfortable that they know what they're getting into as part of the process. And I think the building of that culture starts there.
Yeah. And when you have that kind of collective authenticity in the sense of they get that vibe from everybody, then I think that becomes attractive to that kind of individual, and that kind of individual then becomes more likely to join the organization, and it kind of builds from there. And that's where you get kind of culture, I suppose.
But it's only successful if it's authentic, right? Like if it's just an interview process and then you get into the real job, and it's not that you're in for a world of hurt.
Both sides are.
Right, yeah, exactly. It's more impactful to the company, I think. Unfortunately, but one of the things that I'm very proud of is, we do these, culture surveys, right? The culture amp every 6 months, and at the 28 people, they say one of the questions are, "You going to be? Do you see yourself as an employee 2 years from now?" And every single person said yes. Yeah. So that tells you that we are practicing what we preach. The job is what we tell them it's going to be, and there are, if not better, and they're not surprised. And I think it's the experience during the interview needs to match the actual experience when they get the job. Yeah, and then an atmosphere perspective, right? It's a little different because you're doing the job, but it's that culture has to stay the same. Yeah, and then it becomes like a virtuous cycle. One quick final question I'd like to ask, and it goes back to before. So because I'm really keen to pick up on significant differences here. So 50% from industry is a lot. And it's a lot, and lots of companies really aspire to that. So I work for a big tier 1 vendor that at one point said they wanted 50% of all of their hires, including sales, to come from industry because they really saw the value there. So if you and you talked about former customers as well. So what's the secret sauce in terms of? And I think you mentioned referrals in terms of getting that good pipeline of people coming from industry, and also, how do you go about bringing people in from customers? Has that just been serendipity, or has there been I'll start with customers. I never outreach to customers it's been inbound, right? They use the product and they like the product. I think for me, it's when they can see it solves an actual problem in the industry, that there's a need, And then you look at our 99% retention rate of our customers. So it's not just that we have customers, it's that they stay with us.
Yeah.
They've used the product, they know it works, and because they have, had to close the books, to use financing, but they had to close the books. They understand what it's like getting invoice approvals. They see and they know the actual pain that exists. It draws them to a solution that can solve that problem, right? If you're interested in making a career change and you see a tool and a solution that works and solves a problem you've experienced, that's extremely powerful. Look, we're not curing cancer here, but we're improving the lives of finance folks. No one goes to college to get a finance degree to key an invoice into an ERP. Like, that's not why they got their degree, and nor did the folks that we brought on board. So that's a big, powerful moment for them. Plus, once you have a friend who's done it, or a former colleague that's done it, and they're happy and they can tell you the good, the bad, and the ugly, and they're very happy, that makes it a lot easier. And I'm all for referrals. Now, I don't want to go all the way everyone CPA, because I think there's some benefit to having, as myself, I'm not a CPA. I've worked in industry, but I'm not a CPA. Having folks willing to get different thoughts, different experiences as part of the process as well.
Amazing.
Super. Thank you so much, Dave, for everything. I'm not very sure if you have any questions for us or for our research.
No, I think it's important research. Like I said at the beginning, the culture fit to me is the most important thing. And I've done a lot of my career, and the thing I'm the proudest is this team and what we've done.
So nice.
And to be real, it's not because of me. It's if you get the right people in, it's everyone. And if people truly believe that, because it is the truth here. I'm a bit of this much of the success of the growth and all that kind of stuff. I just make sure we steer one way or the other. So I think this is extremely valuable, research and stuff we're doing here, because we do I'll leave this last thing, our last sales kickoff. Each of the leaders gets to say something, and this is something that I said, and I firmly believe. I believe that a company with good people and great product will always be less successful than a company with great people and good product.
Yeah.
I think it's the people at the end of the day that move the engine. I don't care how good your product is. If your people are okay, you're going to have a harder time. If you got great people, that's going to help propel you further. And that's kind of the outlook that I look at when we're going through and bringing folks onto the solution consulting team here at Tipalti.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time and for this insight.
My pleasure. Thank you. Thank you for wanting to chat with me.
Dave, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks so much. I've learned lots in this conversation, and just really, really appreciate the time. Thank you so much.
Cheers. My pleasure.